everybody, welcome back to Skirts and Words. We are back again at Vault Books and Brew after our little road trip. I am Denise Kawaii. This is my good friend Jen, and this week we have Susanne with us.
Hi.
Author of The Sweet.
The Sweet.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make the leap from thinking about writing a book to actually having a book
in your hands.
A real live book.
A real live book. Yeah. Well, let's see. To begin with, my mother was an elementary school teacher. Okay. So in the home that I grew up in, it was very much a reading culture. And it wasn't something that was like an expectation or something that we were made to do by any means. But when you have 9 older siblings and a mother that taught and a father that was an engineer, everybody always had a book in their hands. And so that's kind of how I grew up. So I remember jotting down a lot of things all throughout my childhood and just remembering that books are always important. Mm-hmm. And I love being here in a bookstore, being here in the vault. It's just, to me, there's more of a connection spiritually in a bookstore than there is in like a house of worship. So this is a really nice place to be in, and I really appreciate both of you inviting me to be here.
Well, it's my favorite place to invite people to.
Yes.
I
and the coffee's good.
It is.
And there's lots of things to read. And
yeah.
So, having grown up with in a home that books were very important and reading was very important, I started writing actually as a teenager, and of course early writing was all journaling. Mm-hmm. But I kind of drifted in and out of different kinds of genres that I enjoyed, and I've always settled in on the mysteries. Mm-hmm. So mysteries are always something that I really enjoyed, and decided later on that, oh, you know what, maybe I could probably do this. So when it actually came down to writing a novel and wanting to write a mystery, I always was drawn to those authors who had worked in a field for a significant amount of time. The John Grishams, the Jonathan Kellermans, that actually worked in that field and then incorporated that into their work. So after spending a lot of time, hope everybody's okay out there, after a lot of time in social services and doing social work, I decided that if I'm going to write what I know,
hold on a sec.
That's what I'm going to do.
Let's just stop for a sec. Because that's going to be really loud in the background, I think.
He's grinning.
It would have been fine without the honking.
Oh, sure.
That really kind of pushed it over the edge.
Okay, so really wanting to feel that I was writing about what I know, I kind of wanted to focus in on social work. So the first job that I had out of college was working in a homeless shelter. And it was quite an experience for me, and I think I was impacted by that work, but mostly about those really, really strong people. Mm-hmm. And, I think that when you work in a helping profession, of course you want to think about helping those people. Mm-hmm. And I also was just impacted by the work itself. So when I look at what Jonathan Kellerman did with early childhood and with child psychology, and bringing that out into the forefront, I thought, well, maybe this is an aspect of our community that really needs a little bit of a focus. So I thought, how do I do that and not write a totally depressing novel that people are actually going to want to read? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of how I jumped into it. And I started the novel many, many years ago when I was still working in social services.
This particular one?
This particular one, The Sweet. And put it away for a long time because life just got in the way. Other things kind of took the focus for a long time. Picked it up probably 10 years after writing the first few chapters and read through it and thought, that's not really half bad. Mm-hmm. And kind of picked it up from there and wrote it till I was finished.
Yeah. Do you think that the space gave you some time to maybe get more in depth and elaborate more?
I think that
story?
I think that it might have, Jen, but it might have also given me time just to mature and have just be able to be. I don't know that the person that started the book by any means would have been the one that finished it. So I think it was me that grew more as a writer
That's
and
a good way to
as a
put it.
person than the story itself.
Mm-hmm. Was there one catalyst, one specific incident where you're like, I just have to sit and write this? Or was it just everything, the stars aligned and you sat down and...
Well, what's funny about that is I moved from a large house to a smaller house, and found, if you even are old enough to remember those little 3.5-inch floppy disks. Okay,
Yes.
Yep.
so that's what the first few chapters had been saved on.
Oh.
And it took me months to find anybody that could actually tell me what was on there.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
So there were some other short stories that I had written, and there were a few other things that I had kind of written from memory, from family type stories, and the first few chapters were on there. But it took me a long time to finally get it off of that disc, because people would look at me and say, "What are you talking about? You got this on a floppy disk."
Yeah, I actually have a box of floppy disks, which are all
Good.
writing from
I'm
when
so
I was
glad
a
to
kid.
hear
Yeah,
that.
you're not the only one. And so for a long time, I had an old computer with a hard drive that could read them, just in case I ever
Sure.
wanted to go back. And at this point, I still have the discs, but those stories are dead to me.
Oh.
It's just
That's too bad.
it's
But you've kept the discs, though.
yeah, they're in the back of one of my drawers in my desk. So
Well, it does make you kind of connect with Sheldon Cooper a little bit when you
Yeah.
figure that you've got something on a disc that you just have to keep. So yeah, anyway, so that's how it all started. But it was quite a few years later. And to be honest with you, when I finally had the time to sit down and do it and tell myself, I'm going to make this happen now. So.
Did you have an idea for the ending when you first started, or did the ending come to you after that?
I had absolutely no clue how it was going to end when I started.
Oh, good. That
writing
makes me
it.
feel
None.
better, because I have a bunch of
None.
stories and I have no clue how they're
None.
going to end.
And I had no idea. In fact, there's a character in the book who is very much like the position that I was in when I worked with the homeless community, and I actually that character evolved a little bit, and I thought, because that was going to be the protagonist of the book, and I still really love that character, but I thought, how do you write a murder mystery and not have the cops in it? So I had to do a little bit of a twist there early on and figure out that somebody needs to be investigating this crime, and it's not going to be the homeless advocate. So
How much of your characters are based on people you know and coworkers? And
there really isn't anybody in particular that's about any one person or any one character that's based on anybody. I guess the safe thing to say is that there are a lot of composites. Certainly some of the characters that are actually street people or residents in the shelters are kind of composite people.
Of experiences.
Yes. But there isn't anybody that's based on one person. And I am asked quite a bit when I tell people it's about the murder of a young homeless woman, and they will say, "Oh, it's not based on true events, is it?" And I'm like, "Of course not." So no, but no, it's totally fiction.
Do you find yourself that you like the fiction genre the best?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but a lot of the locations are real, right?
Most of the locations in the book, because it's actually set in a fictionalized larger city in Southwest Washington.
Right.
And I renamed it, and but yes, a lot of locations are real.
Well, as someone who has lived in Oregon and Washington along the gorge most of my life, it felt very familiar because I've read part of it.
Well, thank you.
So yeah.
I've read a few of yours too.
Well, yay. So, in the suite, is there any particular character that was just your favorite to write that helped you keep getting down on the to write the story?
Well, I identify probably the most with Kelly, the homeless advocate, but she's much more virtuous than I would ever be as a person. And I really enjoyed writing the character Liz Jordan, who is the investigator. And there's a lot of tension between her and a couple of other characters. She has a very contentious relationship with the medical examiner. And And so I'm actually in the sequel that I'm writing. I'm bringing them out again, and they're still not getting along.
So is this the beginning of a series, or do you know yet?
I don't know yet.
See how the sequel goes?
The main reason that I wanted to write the sequel, and I think I've kind of conveyed some of this to Denise a couple of times, that, you know, I feel like I've grown as a writer. My characters have grown. I feel like I know them so well, and I just don't feel like they're finished. You know, there's more they want to say. Whether or not there'll definitely be a second book. Whether or not there'll be more than that, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
What's your favorite part about writing fiction?
My favorite thing about writing fiction is, I think it's kind of a rush when you just feel like you can, it's all just coming out of your imagination. And I'm not much of a nonfiction writer, but there are certain things that I do enjoy reading about. But with fiction, I just kind of feel like it just takes you to another time and place. And I think what I enjoyed the most about this is that you can have an outline, you can think you know where your story's going to go, and sometimes it just doesn't go there. And I found that quite a few times with this book. I don't know that I'm finding it so much in the sequel that I'm writing right now, but I think it's just a matter of where you're going to let it, you know, where you're going to let it go.
So you're an outliner. Are you
I
a
am an
planner?
outliner.
Yeah.
I am an outliner. I don't write them. I change them. I don't write them, you know, with no flexibility. But yeah, I do outline.
Do you find that outlining helps you find the end easier? Like, does it help you to be more focused?
I think it just keeps me organized, and kind of lets me know where do I, you know, what's the next step? Where do I go from here? What I don't do ahead of time, though, is name characters. Don't know why, just don't.
The names just come to you as you're writing?
Well, a few characters I come across, you know, like my son's first name is Jordan, so my protagonist, her last name is Jordan because I wanted that connection there. You know, there's just a few reasons why I plug in a name. Sometimes I sit and I think, no, if this person is going to have this personality, you know, what would go along with that? You know, so, yeah.
That's so funny. The most recent book that I am in production on right now, I had a character that I had in a earlier book, but didn't name that character. She was just somebody who walk on, walk off. And so in this most recent book, in Division, she's actually like in the story, and so writing the whole thing, I didn't know what her name was, and so I just had hashtags whenever it was hashtag, and so I was in my second round of edits, and I was like, I've got to name this lady. So it was a whole project.
Wow, that's interesting.
And how did you come to name her?
Yeah.
I went to Google. Because that's what you do. I looked at lists of popular hippie names in the 1970s. And
well,
that
you
is
should ask me. I could have probably come up with a lot.
Her name is Hazel, is
There
what
you
it
go.
ended up being. But yeah, I had no idea.
That character.
Yeah.
Naming characters is...
When I reread it, I'll know the story behind that now.
There you go.
Yeah.
I name characters for books that I don't have, just for fun. Because I was shelving Westerns the other day, and I was noticing all the names were like Falcon McAllister and Chuck Bronson.
Right.
And so I was coming up with like inanimate objects and then cool last names. So I had like Toaster Jones. And then I would come up with, what was the other one I had? I think it was like Grizzle Longbeard or something. But yeah, that's
cute.
just a fun way to name characters.
One of the last book events that I did, actually it was just such a great time. I actually had a contest, and it was in a bar, and anybody that bought a drink entered a contest to have a character named after themselves. And I actually did 2 drawings, and so 2 pretty good friends of mine have characters named after them in the book.
Nice. I just want to name all the characters for everybody. So if you guys want to hire me to come up with names, I would definitely do that.
I'll remember that.
Yes. The Adventures of Toaster Jones.
Say, now, this is what they're doing, so what would you call that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will remember that when I was in the emergency room, which is never a good thing, but there was a cowboy who was sniffing hand sanitizer. I'm pretty sure I've told you about him before. But I'll let you know when I write because he's going in a book somewhere. He was just the most interesting person. But I'll let you know, and you can name him Toaster.
Hawk hygiene.
There you go.
Alliteration and everything. See, we're done. You're done.
Perfect.
It's written.
Great.
So how did you get from I'm going to write this story to I'm going to try and turn it into like an actual printed book?
Well, I think when I got close to finishing the book and I decided now, how long do I really want to take? Do I want to go through, that possibly endless process of actually trying to sell it to a publisher? Or do I want to look into self-publishing? Because that was something that I had kind of heard about, in the back of my mind. And I did a little research about that. And when, I think her name is Lisa Geneva wrote the book Still Alice.
Oh, yeah.
Many years ago. And she had been a neuroscientist, or probably still is, I shouldn't say had. But when she wrote that book with a novel format, it was very much about supporting someone in early onset Alzheimer's. Okay. And it was a great book, and I loved reading that and finding out that she basically went to Simon & Schuster and said, I don't want to go through the process of selling this to a publisher. I would like to do it, the publishing part of it myself, sell the books myself. So can you just print them for me and then I will sell them myself?
Is that a thing?
And they said yes. Yes. So really, that is how Simon & Schuster got into doing self-publishing, by offering a program and putting this whole thing together about how to do this for people that wanted to write their own books. And I was fascinated by that idea because, by all means, Google it. You can read all about how she did it. But there was so much about supporting families going through that Alzheimer's ordeal. But she'd done it as a novel, even though there was all this clinical information in there that could really help people. And I thought, maybe I could put some information in my book about services to the homeless. What is it really like to be out there and living on the street? What is it like to be supporting people that are lucky to take a shower once a week? That kind of thing. So I thought maybe that's what's really needed in that self-publishing realm. Of course, this was, 2.5 years ago, when I really had no clue what I was doing, or how broad that whole scope of self-publishing is and how many options there are to writers. So, but that's how I kind of learned about self-publishing, and then kind of did a little bit of research on my own ahead of time. And that's what I did. So that's how I got that going.
So it is self-published?
It is.
But through that program?
It is self-published through what's really defined as kind of a hybrid, because I did the self-publishing myself, but there were a lot of decisions made, because instead of doing it like kind of like a cafeteria style, this is what I want to do, I don't want to do that, I do want to do that. It was kind of all laid out ahead of time, like in a package. And at the time, that's what seemed to work for me and my impatience at the time. Whether or not I would do that again, I think I probably would not. So I will probably do things a bit differently with the second book, and already have started doing things a bit differently.
Interesting. Well, you learned things.
Oh, absolutely. It's been quite an education.
What do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned from writing this? I mean, as a writer at self-publishing, what overall do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned?
I think
just starting out.
That if I had to do it all over again, I think it's probably you probably need to invest in as much of yourself and your time and energy into learning how to get the book out there as you do in writing the book itself. And I know, and in a way that kind of makes me go, ooh, I don't really like that, because it's the writing part of it that I really enjoy. But if you're going to market a book, you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you know, since I've been an adult, we've gone from the information age to the digital age to the handheld digital age. And so, you know, things have changed so quickly in the last 30 years that you have to be able to compete kind of on both fronts. You have to be able to, there are so many people anymore that are only interested in ebooks. There are still people that only want to hold a book in their hands, and you have to kind of be able to meet both their needs. So I'm hoping that those of us that are really involved in the business piece of it, with marketing our own writing, are still able to feel that they're devoting enough of themselves to actual the craft.
Yeah, and not just the marketing.
I wrestle with that because there are times when I think, wow, I can send 47 emails today and spend 2 hours on social media, and if I'm lucky, maybe I'll write a couple chapters. And it can be a bit frustrating, and I don't know if other writers feel the same way.
Yeah, well, like I had this dream. Because I know other writers who, you know, as soon as they finish a book, they start writing the next one.
Sure.
And so I have realized I do not have the bandwidth to do that. And so, like, with this, with the Adeline series, I'm working on pushing out the 4th book right now. And as soon as that's done and I'm through that campaign, I'm going to take a month and only write, to get the next book going. Because it does take a lot of energy.
It does.
And I grew up in a sales family, but even though my family is full of business owners and stuff, there's still this belief that if you have a good product and if you just show up, eventually word of mouth will get you going.
Right.
And like you're saying, where half of everyone is only accessible on their on their phone.
Right.
It just you have to find those people to get them talking about whatever you're doing.
You have to find the right group of people, and then they'll do the marketing for you by word of mouth, but it's finding those people and finding that sweet spot. But I think that a lot of people that want to be full-time writers, I think they really need to look at marketing as a side business.
I think so. I think you're right.
I think that's part of the success of the store is that I was in public information for 10 years for emergency management. So I know how to push out a product constantly. I know all about social media, and I think that that's hit a sweet spot. And like Haley Fuchs, she has a degree in marketing. Right. And so I think that that's really helped her sell her books too. So I think it goes hand in hand anymore.
I think it does. And I think that also if you are an author who is working with one of the big 5 and have under contract with them, you can bet they're out there doing a lot of the same things that all of us are doing. They just may not have as much choice about it because they're under contract, which again is one of those reasons why I think, oh, so maybe we're the smart ones because we're self-published and we can control our own opportunities and our own choices of where we spend our energy. Because I'm sure that when you see, you know, my favorite author, Ken Follett, when he's, you know, going all over Europe, you know, doing this, you know, this speaking engagement and doing this and that for his wonderful novels that are coming out, he probably has times when he feels like he's being led around, I'm sure. And I'm sure a lot of them do.
I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another because, he's got publicists to call and make the contacts, and he's got social media people to do that. But on the other hand,
there's one of him.
So I don't know, is what's worth more, the freedom or the? I mean, there's freedom and there's freedom.
And you know, and like Denise was saying, you know, your bandwidth is only what it is, and you need to know what your limits are. And you know, if I had started out doing this, you know, 30, maybe even 40 years ago, it would have been very different. But at this point in my life, it's like, you know, I really enjoy doing this, and I also really enjoy doing that, and you know, have people in my life I want to spend time with, and don't always want to be locked in a room with my keyboard. So,
I always like to think of some of the notoriously hermit-like writers, like Steinbeck or something, and try to think of how they would handle
Hemingway.
How they would handle this. Not Steinbeck. Who am I thinking of? Salinger. Since he hated everyone. Like, how would he deal with self-promotion? I can't imagine. He'd be like, whatever, read this, I don't care.
Yeah, he would. They would.
Yeah.
They would.
Yeah. Well, and there is some leeway. So if you're watching this and you're not a people person, I mean, you can do some marketing that is not person to person.
Yes.
There are options. It's just it's a different kind of difficult. When you're just doing 2-line ads somewhere on the internet.
Right.
I feel like you have to sell so much of yourself, though, and be out there so much to really get the
well,
books
and
out.
I worked at an event with Haley a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how it is a lot easier to sell face-to-face for both of us because people, I mean, they like us. So that,
Of course.
And it's harder to say no or be like, ew. Like, to your face. And then once you get past, you're more likely to engage. And I think there's definitely something to that. And once you see, that's how it was when I was little. That's what really struck me when I met my first author. I was like, you're a person.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
And it like blew my little mind. And so I think when they're like, but you and you and you and this is you, and that's so crazy.
Yeah,
it is.
I love that feeling. So I think that really helps.
I know exactly what you mean. And as much as I value, every person that I've connected with online, or every person that has responded to a post, or there's something about, like you're describing, standing in a bookstore and actually talking to someone face to face, or being able to read a portion of a book to a group. It's just such a connection, and it's a connection for me too with all those other writers, throughout. That have done that very thing. I mean, every once in a while when I'm reading, I think about Charles Dickens standing up there, in New York City, reading, his books on that first tour, or when the first time he read A Christmas Carol aloud, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So
can you imagine
it's
being
very
there?
exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
It is. I love that. I like the human connection part of writing.
And I can't say enough thanks to booksellers, such as yourself, because they really keep the whole industry alive, I think. I mean, that's just my view of it, because it's one thing, to get online and, click and you buy a book, which is a wonderful thing in this day and age. But there's something about taking a child to a bookstore.
Yeah. And it's different. I can sell so many books just based on like my excitement level, and they want, because when you go to Amazon, you're like, oh hey, we think you'd like this, like okay, robot, cool, like maybe I will. If I have a specific book in mind, you can go to Amazon, whatever. But when I have people that just kind of meander in and they're like, I don't know, what do you think? And I'm like, oh my god. So I'm like the
I've got a life.
It is. I'm like Kristen Wiig on Saturday Night Live. There's like a sketch where she's like, oh. I'm always like that when I'm really excited about a book, and so I think that translates, and so then you can sell that more. So and then when you meet the authors, it makes me more excited, because I'm like, oh, I met her and it was really cool.
And as much as I love writing, and I could spend hours and hours just sitting there coming up with, extending the story, I'm a big reader. And so sometimes I think, okay, do I want to write? Do I want to read? And an awful lot of times, I'd much rather just exercise my brain and just read.
Yeah, and I'd much rather edit.
Oh, very much.
That's my thing. I just love. I want to tear people's stuff apart, because I know that I have the ability.
Be careful how you say that around people that are writers.
I know.
Because they're going to be like, she likes to edit. Sign that one out.
I know.
So.
But no, I know that I have the ability to write, but I'd almost rather read other people's things and be like, yes.
Yeah. And we really appreciate that in people. Good editors are hard to find.
Yeah, it's fun. It's more of a hobby. I'm a editing enthusiast.
It's okay. You can continue to be a professional bookseller.
Yes.
And then
that's right.
It is fun.
Do everything else as a hobby.
Like feeding my children and those things. That's a hobby.
Well, I mean, they're old enough. They can figure it out, right?
They're fine.
That's right. They can open a can of apple.
Oh, yeah.
They can.
Well, so what's your timeline for book 2? Do you know?
I'm about a third of the way through, and I actually am using a little bit different process than I was with this book. I think I mentioned that before. So I'm hoping early 2020. I'm actually having an editor look over the first chunk of the manuscript, which I did not do with this book. I wish I had, but then live and learn. I'm thinking early next year.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And it's exciting for me because I'm enjoying the process more, and I think it's just because I'm a little bit more familiar with it.
Yeah, I find that. I mean, every book is hard. I think my 10th and 11th books are coming out
Goodness.
this summer, but
It's a lot of work.
But the process of it, like the mechanics of knowing what comes next, that part is easier and smoother as it goes.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think I know my characters better now, and I think I can anticipate what they might be doing a little bit better. I just feel better about the process in general. And this one, you know, the first one will always be it's like your firstborn, you know. It's
right.
like, but I think I will enjoy this second one a lot, and I think it's going to be a bit longer.
do you have a title?
I do not have a title. It is the. In fact, it is the sequel. Right on the computer, it says draft sequel. That's as far as I've gotten. So.
Cool.
But it's a murder mystery, and it's set in the homeless community again, but it's got a little bit different twist. There's going to be some politics involved. Greed is going to rear its ugly head, and a lot of secrets coming out from the past.
Oh, interesting. And so this is a fictionalized version of like Longview, or like just Southwest Washington-ish town?
That large town, very close to the Columbia River.
Oh, okay. Yes.
The town I lived and worked in and raised my family in for many, many years. But I just renamed it. In the books, I call it Columbia City, which there is a Columbia City, Oregon.
There is, yes.
But I went with Columbia City because actually Vancouver was called Columbia City once upon a time, very briefly. But that's why I decided to rename it. And somebody asked me that one time, why didn't you just call it Vancouver? And I said, because I wrote it, I can call it whatever I want.
Exactly.
That's, right.
That's true.
That's right.
It's your universe.
And because I've never liked the name Vancouver. Don't like saying it, don't like reading it. Anyway, it's just the way it is. So
clearly it's an issue with you. I get it.
Yes,
Well, that is exciting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Any last parting words for any aspiring writers?
Just keep reading, keep writing, be very nice to your booksellers and your editors.
That's true.
If you can, be nice to your editors. And just keep reading. It's one of the things that makes life wonderful, being able to read.
I agree.
Well, thank you. We have enjoyed our time with you. Thank you
been
so
great.
much. Yes.
Great
And join
to
us
see
next
you.
time for our stunning conclusion of season 2 with a mystery guest.
We don't even know who they are.
Maybe a mystery location.
Possibly.
Yeah, we don't know. The world is our oyster. Thank you.
Thank you.